Hi, my name is O for YouTube videos. I am a feminist and a lesbian. I make conversational commentary videos about both of those things, and today I want to talk about Taylor Swift. Honestly, I kind of always want to talk about Taylor Swift all the time. I'm very moderated in how often I talk about Taylor Swift on my YouTube channel compared to how much I think about her or talk about her to my friends. Even the ones who don't care about Taylor Swift hear about her kind of all the time from me. And hey, I realized I could be that friend for you. Have you been wanting somebody to explain what the deal for the whole Masters thing is? I can do that. I can do that for you. You can let me do that for you. I actually knew that I wanted to talk about this because the sale of Taylor Swift's Masters actually came up in my most recent Baldoni deep dive when I spoke to my friend Kat Tenbarge about Baldoni's faux feminism. Like, what are the odds even that 1 week after we talked about this in that last video, there's a big update for the first time in like 5 years?
I know, it's so serendipitous. And it's so interesting that like all the people we talk about are connected to each other in some way. Like the Blake Lively Taylor Swift connection of it all and like all the other people who we're going to talk about. It's just like it really is just like high school where you have like one group of specific people who are like the main characters.
You were the first person I texted, actually, when I saw. I was like, oh my
I'm
God.
so honored.
So excited. I honestly kind of can't believe how emotionally invested I am in this whole saga of her getting her master's back. Like, I have actually cried over this, which feels a little bit silly, but like, it's just cool. It's just really cool.
And it helps that she has created this incredible soundtrack to the whole saga because it's like My Tears Ricochet is one of my favorite Taylor Swift songs, and the bridge always makes me feel so emotional. And it's just such a profound metaphor for like this process and what she has gone through.
I made my mind up already that I was going to do a video just about this for the benefit of anybody who might not have really understood the point of Taylor Swift's re-recording project. I personally was extremely plugged into what Taylor Swift was doing during the summer of 2019. So I saw all of this go down because I was very closely keeping up with the promo for her Lover album. And if I had started working on this video even just a few days sooner than I started, it would have been out of date by the end of the week, because on May 30th of 2025, almost exactly 6 years to the date of her masters being sold in the first place, it was announced that Taylor Swift now owns all of those masters. And I'm going to take you through all of it. What happened when they were sold, why Scooter being the one to own those masters was uniquely devastating to Taylor Swift, and what she did and how she got her music back. As you can probably glean just from the introduction of this video and from me saying that I want to talk about her even more often than I do, I am a fan of Taylor Swift. I don't tend to self-identify as a Swiftie, but I like her, and I get it, billionaires are bad, etc., etc. But I think refusing to read this as a moral win for the concept of artists getting to own their own work, or as a win for a woman wresting autonomy back from men who have been very publicly trying to grasp that away from her for the last few years, is myopic, and a take I'm not interested in. Which is just to say, I will not be reading the paragraphs and paragraphs I'm sure that I will get about how she's a wealthy white woman and therefore shouldn't deserve any sympathy. A rule that you wouldn't think would upset people as much as it does is if you don't have time to watch my video, I don't have time to read your essay. Not that I, particularly mind when paragraphs are left and it boosts me in the algorithm because the Baldoni defenders are clocking in to do their free smear campaign shift. I only really mind spam when it's not pushing my video to more people, like when it's in my email and my voicemail. Which is why something I absolutely have time for today is to thank today's sponsor, Aura. Aura can't do anything about my YouTube comment section, but they help me with spam everywhere it actually matters. If you've ever wondered how your inbox is always full of spam, or how scammers get your phone number to leave you a zillion voicemails or text you and tell you that you have unpaid tolls in New Jersey when you don't even have a car and you've never been to New Jersey, that's because of data brokers. Companies that broker your data, and they do it without your permission, without your consent, and without cutting you into the millions of dollars they make selling your private information to anyone who wants it. Marketers, scammers, even stalkers. Here's the thing. Data brokers are legally required to remove your information if you request it, but they make it intentionally confusing and complicated to request it, sometimes getting you to make a profile and give them even more of your information just to have it taken down. And then it doesn't even stay down once it is down. They put it back up and just wait for you to remember to request another removal. which is why I recommend Aura to my friends, family, and everyone in the Nuance Corner. They take care of the hard parts, automatically removing your info from these websites and keeping it off. And while Aura does remove your information from these shady websites, that's not all it does. It's all-in-one digital security. You might already have a digital security tool, but not having Aura is like locking the front door and leaving the back door wide open. With Aura, you can get alerts if your personal information is found on the dark web, real-time fraud alerts for credit and banking, 24/7 monitoring to keep your identity secure, a secure VPN, antivirus, password manager, and more, with US-based support available 24/7 and up to $5 million in identity theft insurance if things do go wrong. One app, every layer of protection. I've been using Aura for around 6 months now, and I always say this, but as a feminist on the internet, honestly, even just as a woman, it makes me feel much safer to know that I'm not the only one trying to keep me safe online. And the emails that I get with all the opt-out requests they submitted on my behalf on websites I wouldn't have even known to check for myself on help me to breathe a lot easier. You can try Aura 2 for free for 14 days at aura.com/ofidoki, and in those 2 weeks, you'll discover where your data is being exposed and sold, and you might discover you breathe a little easier too. I'm not leaving myself vulnerable, and you shouldn't either. Thank you so much to Aura for sponsoring this video and so many others on this channel. Let's travel back to 2019, shall we? 2019 would have been a big year for Taylor Swift even if none of the Masters brouhaha had happened. Her contract with her former and first label, Big Machine Records, had ended in 2018, and 2019 would see the release of her first album under a new label, UMG, where she had secured a contract that guaranteed her ownership of all new music going forward. The first album that she would own under this new deal is called Lover, and she was doing the sort of full press push for this album that I genuinely believe we might never see again. It's almost hard to imagine now that she's released so many albums in a row without so much as a promotional track ahead of time, but we got multiple singles and music videos for Lover before the album was released. Taylor Swift was very, very excited about Lover, and I was too. In the summer of 2019, at the height of this dizzying press tour, about 2 weeks after the release of the You Need to Calm Down music video, an announcement was made. As I've already mentioned in the introduction, Scooter Braun had partnered with Big Machine, and in the process, he obtained control over all of Taylor Swift's original 6 albums, along with unreleased tracks, photography, and music videos. The same day that this news broke, Taylor Swift posted the following letter on her Tumblr. This is Scooter Braun, bullying me on social media when I was at my lowest point. He's about to own all the music I've ever made. For years, I asked, pleaded for a chance to own my work. Instead, I was given an opportunity to sign back up to Big Machine Records and earn one album back at a time, one for every new one I turned in. I walked away because I knew once I signed that contract, Scott Borchetta would sell the label, thereby selling me and my future. I had to make the excruciating choice to leave behind my past. Music I wrote on my bedroom floor and videos I dreamed up and paid for from the money I earned playing in bars, then clubs, then arenas, then stadiums. Some fun facts about today's news. I learned about Scooter Braun's purchase of my masters as it was announced to the world. All I could think about was the incessant manipulative bullying I've received at his hands for years. Like when Kim Kardashian orchestrated an illegally recorded snippet of a phone call to be leaked, and then Scooter got his 2 clients together to bully me online about it. See photo. Or when his client, Kanye West, organized a revenge porn music video which strips my body naked. Now Scooter has stripped me of my life's work that I wasn't given an opportunity to buy. Essentially, my musical legacy is about to lie in the hands of someone who tried to dismantle it. This is my worst-case scenario. This is what happens when you sign a deal at 15 to someone for whom the term loyalty is clearly just a contractual concept. And when that man says music has value, he means its value is beholden to men who had no part in creating it. When I left my masters in Scott's hands, I made peace with the fact that eventually he would sell them. Never in my worst nightmares did I imagine the buyer would be Scooter. Anytime Scott Borchetta has heard the words Scooter Braun escape my lips, it was when I was either crying or trying not to. He knew what he was doing. They both did. Controlling a woman who didn't want to be associated with them. In perpetuity. That means forever. Thankfully, I am now signed to a label that believes I should own anything I create. Thankfully, I left my past in Scott's hands and not my future. And hopefully, young artists or kids with musical dreams will read this and learn about how to better protect themselves in a negotiation. You deserve to own the art you make. I will always be proud of my past work, but for a healthier option, Lover will be out August 23rd. Sad and grossed out. Broken heart emoji. Taylor. We're entering Darvo territory. We're entering you walk away from this video understanding what the smallest man who ever lived is about and that it's not about Joe Alwyn territory. A lot of people would put statements forward. We're going to go over quite a bit of them, both in support and against Taylor. The first one we're going to do is against Taylor. The first guy who wanted to come out and start reversing victim and offender was, of course, her former manager, Scott Borchetta. So, it's time for some truth. ... In regard to a post earlier today from Taylor, it's time to set some things straight. Taylor's dad, Scott Swift, was a shareholder in Big Machine Records, LLC. We first alerted all of the shareholders on Thursday, June 20th for an official shareholders call scheduled for Tuesday, June 25th. On the 6:25 call, the shareholders were made aware of the pending deal with Ithaca Holdings and had 3 days to go over all of the details of the proposed transaction. We then had a final call on Friday, June 28th, in which the transaction passed with a majority vote and 3 of the 5 shareholders voting yes, with 92% of the shareholders vote. Out of courtesy, I personally texted Taylor at 9:06 p.m. Saturday, June 29th to inform her prior to the story breaking on the morning of Sunday, June 30th, so she could hear it directly from me. I guess it might somehow be possible that her dad, Scott, 13 management lawyer Jay Shotties, who represented Scott Swift on the shareholder calls, or 13 management executive and Big Machine LLC shareholder Frank Bell, who was on the shareholder calls, didn't say anything to Taylor over the prior 5 days. I guess it's possible that she might not have seen my text, but I truly doubt that she woke up to the news when everyone else did. I am attaching a few very important deal points in what was part of our last official offer to Taylor Swift to remain at Big Machine Records. Her 13 management team and attorney Don Passman went over this document in great detail and reported the terms to her in great detail. Taylor and I then talked through the deal together. As you will read, 100% of all Taylor Swift assets were to be transferred to her immediately upon signing the new agreement. We were working together on a new type of deal for our new streaming world that was not necessarily tied to albums, but more of a length of time. We are an independent record company. We do not have tens of thousands of artists and recordings. My offer to Taylor for the size of our company was extraordinary. But it was also all I could offer, as I am responsible for dozens of artists' careers and over 120 executives and their families. Taylor and I remained on very good terms when she told me she wanted to speak with other record companies and see what was out there for her. I never got in her way and wished her well. The morning that the new Taylor/UMG announcement was going to be made, she texted me shortly before letting me know that the announcement was coming in a few minutes. As we both posted on our socials, we saluted each other and cheered each other on. Taylor had every chance in the world to own not just her master recordings, but every video, photograph, everything associated to her career. She chose to leave. As to her comments about being in tears or close to it anytime my new partner, Scooter Braun's name was brought up, I certainly never experienced that. Was I aware of some prior issues between Taylor and Justin Bieber? Yes. But there were also times where Taylor knew that I was close to Scooter, and that Scooter was a very good source of information for upcoming album releases, tours, etc., and I'd reach out to him for information on our behalf. Scooter was never anything but positive about Taylor. He called me directly about Manchester to see if Taylor would participate. She declined. He called me directly to see if Taylor wanted to participate in the Parkland March. She declined. Scooter has always been and will continue to be a supporter and honest custodian for Taylor and her music. This is the text Taylor sent to me on Monday, November 19th at 8:57 a.m. Scott, I hope this finds you well. Since communication ran dry on our negotiations, I've done what I told you I would do and gone out exploring other options. Owning my masters was very important to me, but I've since realized that there are things that mean even more to me in the bigger picture. I had a choice whether to bet on my past or to bet on the future, and I think knowing me, you can guess which one I chose. I also saw a rare opportunity to effect positive change for a lot of other artists with the leverage I have right now. I know you believe in the same things I do, and I'd like to think you would be proud of what I've negotiated for in my deal. I wanted to tell you first that I'll be signing with Lucian. I honestly, truly cherish everything you and I have built together, and I plan on saying so in my announcement of the new deal. What we accomplish together will be a lasting legacy and a case study on excellent partnerships, and may it continue. I still view you as a partner and friend, and I hope you feel the same. Sending you a hug and my most sincere gratitude. And so much love, Taylor. Here's the text I sent on the evening of June 29th at 9:05 p.m. Dear Taylor, hope all is well, and congratulations on the success of your first two singles from Lover. I can't wait to hear the entire album. ... I wanted to pass along to you the same courtesy that you passed along to me in regard to my future. Tomorrow morning, Sunday, June 30th, at 10 a.m. Central, the Wall Street Journal will announce that I am entering into a merger/acquisition with Scooter Braun and Ithaca Holdings. This move will give us more pop culture superpower than ever before, and I'm so excited about the future. I want you to know that I will continue to be the proud custodian of your previous works, and will continue to keep you and your team abreast of all future plans for releases of your work. Nothing but the best. Scott. Screenshot of deal points. And that's the truth. ... Scott Borchetta. And if you look at the screenshots for the contract, it confirms that they were trying to get her to sign on for another 10 years, not even tied to albums, but to a length of 10 whole years, which feels absurd and does not prove to me at all that Scott Borchetta gave a shit about trying to give Taylor Swift a good deal, but in trying to make sure that his company was valuable enough to sell to somebody. Also, frankly, I'm not convinced that her father knowing about this, if he did, means that she would have been given much of a heads up. I don't like Taylor Swift's parents, and you can't make me. It's not surprising to me that Scott Swift, a man who announced his daughter's birth with a jokey business merger birth announcement, might have not exactly been Father of the Year in this or any situation. Either way, though, this letter from Scott Borchetta was enough to confuse the narrative. Even though Taylor was not given the opportunity to purchase her masters without selling the next 10 years of her life to Big Machine, I've seen people claiming that she had simply decided not to buy them. And this isn't the case. Taylor's lawyer made a statement on July 2nd clarifying that this was not the case, saying Scott Borchetta never gave Taylor Swift an opportunity to purchase her masters or the label outright with a check in the way he is now apparently doing for others. There's more that Taylor said in her own defense, and we're going to get into that. We're going to get into all of how this impacted her sparkling summer of Lover promo, of course. But before I do, I want to talk about what I was saying earlier, the Darvo campaign and the way that other people jumped in to take Scott Borchetta and Scooter Braun's side. Also, yes, Scott Borchetta, Scott Swift, and Scooter, it's a nickname for Scott. They're all named Scott. Sorry to any good Scots out there. I'm not saying ASAP, but these three for sure are. Camps formed pretty much immediately, though, among other celebrities as well as public opinion. The first post I want to go over is by Justin Bieber. Along with a picture of the two of them from when he opened on the Fearless tour, he posted,
Hey Taylor, first of all, I would like to apologize for posting that hurtful Instagram post. At the time, I thought it was funny, but looking back, it was distasteful and insensitive. I have to be honest though, it was my caption and post that I screenshotted of Scooter and Kanye that said, Taylor Swift, what up? He didn't have anything to do with it, and it wasn't even a part of the conversation in all actuality. He was the person who told me not to joke like that. Scooter has had your back since the days you graciously let me open up for you. As the years have passed, we haven't crossed paths and gotten to communicate our differences, hurts, or frustrations. So for you to take it to social media and get people to hate on Scooter isn't fair. What were you trying to accomplish by posting that blog? Seems to me like it was to get sympathy. You also knew that in posting that your fans would go and bully Scooter. Anyway, one thing I know is both Scooter and I love you. I feel like the only way to resolve conflict is through communication. So banter back and forth online I don't believe solves anything. I'm sure Scooter and I would love to talk to you and resolve any conflict, pain, or any feelings that need to be addressed. Neither Scooter or I have anything negative to say about you. We truly want the best for you. I usually don't rebuttal things like this, but when you try and deface someone I love's character, that's crossing a line.
As I've already mentioned, plenty of other celebrities weighed in on this pretty much right away, but I want to sit with Justin Bieber's response for a moment here. Justin defending Scooter makes sense a little bit. They still worked together at this point, and Scooter famously discovered Justin. There was a level of loyalty there at some point. And also, as I think is pretty backed up in much of Justin Bieber's other actions and recent social media posts, there's also a level of desire to humiliate and control a woman. Because check out what Justin Bieber is actually doing here. He's saying that Taylor's feelings are wrong. She doesn't know how he or Scooter feel about her. They do love her. That's apparently something that there's no requirement of showing, but that she can still be wrong if she doesn't know. Because, as we've already mentioned, Justin did post that Taylor Swift What Up FaceTime call with Scooter during the fallout from Snakegate. But don't worry, as he pointed out to her, that wasn't even Scooter's idea to post, right? I'm sure that Scooter Braun must have been posting much more respectfully about Taylor Swift, since he was the one who told Justin that that caption wasn't okay. Oh, wait. No. Scooter Braun was sharing posts that his friends made that said things like, "When your friend buys Taylor Swift," a thing I know Taylor also remembers because she mentioned it in her Billboard Woman of the Decade acceptance speech.
The fact is that private equity is what enabled this man to think, according to his own social media post, that he could buy me. But I'm obviously not going willingly.
The other thing that this post from Justin Bieber does, beyond claiming that these shitty men actually secretly love and root for her, is, you guessed it, reverse the victim and offender. Taylor used the word bullying first, and it feels to me like it's clearly where they even got the idea to accuse her of this. Justin was not the only one to cry bully either. Scooter's ex-wife, they divorced a couple of years after this, so this woman ruined her own credibility by standing up for him over nothing, apparently, posted this whole lecturing Instagram story to even further drive in this role reversal, where by sharing her feelings about bullying, Taylor Swift was actually the true bully. Yael Cohen wrote, "I have never been one for a public airing of laundry, but when you attack my husband, here we go. Let's start with @Taylor Swift. Whoa. Then let's get the facts straight. You were given the opportunity to own your masters. You passed. Interesting that the man you're so grossed out by believed in you more than you believe in yourself. Your dad is a shareholder and was notified, and Borchetta personally told you before this came out, so no, you didn't find out with the world. And girl, who are you to talk about bullying? The world has watched you collect and drop friends like wilted flowers. My husband is anything but a bully. He's spent his life standing up for people and causes he believes in. ... Beyond that, it's easy to see the point of putting this out was to get people to bully him. You are supposed to be a role model, but continue to model bullying. He's a manager, not God. He cannot control the actions of other humans, even ones he manages. Don't blame him because Kim caught you in a lie. It's embarrassing, I know, but adults own up to their mistakes. We learn and grow from them. We don't divert blame and blur the lines of reality to suit our needs. What you haven't seen is what happens behind closed doors, when he has supported and stood up for you, when he has challenged his clients to be kind or be quiet, when he has reached an olive branch out to you on numerous occasions. Scooter was so excited to work and build with you. How embarrassing. This temper tantrum is because you didn't get your own way. He believes in and supports you. I sincerely hope you can learn to love and believe in yourself the way my husband does. Lastly, if you think he can control his clients, please control your fans. Leave our personal life and kids out of this. You don't understand yet what line that crosses, but one day you will. And I hope you have the dignity, class, and kindness to leave your fans out of this and have an open discussion. Tumblr can't fix this. A phone call can. @Taylor Swift. I'm here to talk privately anytime. Which clearly pisses me off for pretty much exactly the same reasons as Justin's did. And Demi Lovato also jumped in here. You know what all three of these people have in common? They're no longer affiliated with Scooter Braun. But at the time they were. So I'll mention, Demi posted this on their Instagram. I have dealt with bad people in this industry, and Scooter is not one of them. He's a good man. Personally, I'm grateful he came into my life when he did. Please stop dragging people or bullying them. There's enough hate in this world as it is. Y'all can come after me all you want, but I'm always gonna stay loyal to my team. I value loyalty more than most people in this world, and if my name is gonna be brought into conversations, I'm gonna stand up for myself and the ones on my team. And it wasn't all hate for Taylor that was being posted. Many of her friends defended her, both in the comment section of Justin's post and on their own social media. Halsey, for example, posted something really sweet.
Taylor Swift is a huge reason why I always insisted to write my own music. I believed if she did it in a way that made my teeth ache like cold water and my heart swell and my eyes leak, then I should too, she wrote on Twitter. She deserves to own the painstaking labor of her heart. And it turns my guts that no matter how much power or success a woman has in this life, you are still susceptible to someone coming along and making you feel powerless out of spite.
And Kelly Clarkson famously encouraged Taylor to re-record her original albums. Taylor would mention the support she got, especially from other women in the industry, during her Woman of the Decade acceptance speech, and I think that's an important note while we're still in the smear campaign of all of this.
Yet the most amazing thing was to discover that it would be the women in our industry who would have my back and show me the most vocal support at one of the most difficult times. And I will never, ever forget it. Like, ever.
Unlike Snakegate, which will require its own deep dive video to explain, I do feel as though public opinion was largely on Taylor's side, despite Scooter's associates trying to run another Darvo campaign against her. That doesn't make this any less frustrating to look back on, though. The way that Taylor's Tumblr post was twisted, the way that her lawyers had to keep clarifying as claims were made. Clarifying to people, for example, that Scott Swift is not on the board of directors and never has been. On June 25th, there was a shareholder phone call that Scott Swift did not participate in due to a very strict NDA that bound all shareholders and prohibited any discussions at all without risk of severe penalty. Again, I think the worst we can infer from that is that he may have known that it was going to be sold and still didn't know the specifics of who it was being sold to because he wasn't on the call. Taylor spoke more about all of this in an interview with CBS following the release of her Lover album.
But I think I'm better at standing up for myself when I've been wronged. So that's something that I think also comes with growing up.
Which brings us to Scooter Braun.
And this is one of my favorite interviews. I'm so fond of the Lover era and of the points that she makes in this interview. This was in late August of that same summer. And Taylor spoke here, too, about why Scott selling to Scooter, of all people, was her worst-case scenario. It's something I think somebody with only a casual understanding of this situation could walk away without really getting, is that Taylor Swift knew she didn't have any choice but to let Scott Borchetta sell the next 10 years of her career to the highest bidder if she stayed with that label. She knew when she left that somebody was going to buy her previous work, but it was Scooter in particular that was so devastating, which is likely why they didn't give her any warning when they launched this at her during the Lover promo. Even Scott's claim of texting her at 9 p.m. the night before, I think he would have known much sooner than 9 p.m. the night before that this was in the works, right? Makes you kind of wonder why he didn't want to tell her about it, right? I think Taylor can tell you.
Borchetta, who worked with Swift for years, says she and those close to her, including her dad, who was an investor, knew about the deal in advance, and that Swift had previously been offered the chance to buy her own masters. She remembers it differently. And so you didn't see it coming?
No.
So how did you find out?
I found out when it was online, when it hit the news.
Nobody in your inner circle
Nobody knew.
And you didn't smell it?
No. I knew he would sell my music. I knew he would do that. I couldn't believe who he sold it to because we've had endless conversations about Scooter Braun, and he has 300 million reasons to conveniently forget those conversations.
Also, infuriatingly, in this timeline, Scooter tweeted to congratulate Taylor about Lover after it came out. Get a job! Stay away from her! Things settled down until November of that same year when the American Music Awards neared, and Taylor posted the following to her social media with a caption, "Don't know what else to do." Guys, it's been announced recently that the American Music Awards will be honoring me with the Artist of the Decade award at this year's ceremony. I've been planning to perform a medley of my hits throughout the decade on the show. Scott Borchetta and Scooter Braun have now said that I'm not allowed to perform my old songs on television because they claim that would be re-recording my music before I'm allowed to next year. Additionally, and this isn't the way I had planned on telling you this news, Netflix has created a documentary about my life for the past few years. Scott and Scooter have declined the use of my older music or performance footage for this project, even though there is no mention of either them or Big Machine Records anywhere in the film. Scott Borchetta told my team that they'll allow me to use my music only if I do these things. If I agree to not re-record copycat versions of my songs next year, which is something I'm both legally allowed to do and looking forward to, and also told my team that I need to stop talking about him and Scooter Braun. I feel very strongly that sharing what is happening to me could change the awareness level for other artists and potentially help them avoid a similar fate. The message being sent to me is very clear. Basically, be a good little girl and shut up, or you'll be punished. This is wrong. Neither of these men had a hand in the writing of those songs. They did nothing to create the relationship I have with my fans. So this is where I'm asking for your help. Please let Scott Borchetta and Scooter Braun know how you feel about this. Scooter also manages several artists who I really believe care about other artists and their work. Please ask them for help with this. I'm hoping that maybe they can talk some sense into the men who are exercising tyrannical control over someone who just wants to play the music she wrote. I'm especially asking for help from the Carlyle Group, who put up money for the sale of my music to these two men. I just want to be able to perform my own music. That's it. I've tried to work this out privately through my team, but have not been able to resolve anything. Right now, my performance at the AMAs, the Netflix documentary, and any other recorded events I am planning to play until November of 2020 are a question mark. I love you guys, and I thought you should know what's been going on. Taylor. And then, because they were doing Darvo, and because they think everyone's stupid, Big Machine puts out this unsigned press release on their website. See if you can pick out the thing that they happen not to mention in this blog post. I'll let you know if you were right when we're done. As Taylor Swift's partner for over a decade, we were shocked to see her Tumblr statements yesterday based on false information. At no point did we say Taylor could not perform on the AMAs or block her Netflix special. In fact, we do not have the right to keep her from performing live anywhere. Since Taylor's decision to leave Big Machine last fall, we have continued to honor all of her requests to license her catalog to third parties as she promotes her current record, in which we do not financially participate. The truth is, Taylor has admitted to contractually owing millions of dollars and multiple assets to our company, which is responsible for 120 hardworking employees who helped build her career. We have worked diligently to have a conversation about these matters with Taylor and her team to productively move forward. We started to see progress over the past 2 weeks, and we're optimistic as recently as yesterday that this may get resolved. However, despite our persistent efforts to find a private and mutually satisfactory solution, Taylor made a unilateral decision last night to enlist her fanbase in a calculated manner that greatly affects the safety of our employees and their families. Taylor, the narrative you have created does not exist. All we ask is to have a direct and honest conversation. When that happens, you will see there is nothing but respect, kindness, and support waiting for you on the other side. To date, not one of the invitations to speak with us and work through this has been accepted. Rumors fester in the absence of communication. Let's not have that continue here. We share the collective goal of giving your fans the entertainment they both want and deserve. Big Machine Label Group. I committed to doing that voice before I realized how many of these I was going to have to read. Did you catch it? Says nothing about the use of her prior music, just a bunch of unrelated bullshit. It's so clearly bullshit, and Taylor's publicist, Dree Payne, conveyed as much to Variety. The truth is, on October 28, 2019 at 5:17 p.m., the Vice President, Rights Management and Business Affairs from Big Machine Label Group sent Taylor Swift's team the following. Quote, "Please be advised that Big Machine Label Group will not agree to issue licenses for existing recordings or waivers of its re-recording restrictions in connection with these two projects, the Netflix documentary and the Alibaba Double 11 event, an event in China at which Swift performed last week." To avoid an argument over rights, Taylor performed 3 songs off her new album Lover at the Double 11 event, as it was clear that Big Machine Label Group felt any televised performance of catalog songs violated her agreement. In addition, Yesterday, Scott Borchetta, CEO and founder of Big Machine Label Group, flatly denied the request for both American Music Awards and Netflix. Please notice, in Big Machine's statement, they never actually deny either claim Taylor said last night in her post. Lastly, Big Machine is trying to deflect and make this about money by saying she owes them, but an independent professional auditor has determined that Big Machine owes Taylor $7.9 million of unpaid royalties over several years. Variety has seen a document that appears to support her claims about Big Machine denying song use, although its authenticity could not be immediately independently verified. After this, more celebrities weighed in again, I think pretty much entirely on Taylor's side of things, and Big Machine made a statement to Billboard that didn't directly reference Taylor, but said that they were going to let everyone who had been on the label perform anything they wanted to, but also that they didn't need to grant that kind of permission anyway. And this was, if you'll remember, the performance where Taylor Swift had the little girls on stage with her and she wore the button down with all her former album names printed on it. And then, Darvo, the man is the victim as always, no matter what he's done to the woman. Scooter Braun posts an open letter on his Instagram on November 22nd, and he's talking about how it's Taylor Swift's fault that he's getting death threats. And I'm sorry, I just have no sympathy for this man. First of all, I know I've already said Snakegate is its own video, but does he think that Taylor Swift was not getting death threats during Snakegate when there was big viral graffiti claiming that she was dead and celebrating it? Also, yes, that's why the old Taylor can't come to the phone right now. Why? Oh, because she's dead? You're welcome. Come back for the Snakegate video if that blew your mind. There is so much more where that came from. But, like, as we can see in his wife bringing Snakegate back up again, does he think that Taylor Swift wasn't getting death threats when Kim and Kanye were running their smear campaign against Taylor? Does he think that Taylor Swift said in any of those posts that we've read, hey, go send Scooter Braun death threats? You can also see this in the Melissa Nathan and Jen Abel complaints about getting death threats too after running the Blake Lively smear campaign, and my lack of sympathy there is the same. I think death threats are very bad and nobody should send them or be sent them, but I also don't have it in me to feel super bad if part of your job is riling people up into hate mobs and one of them turns on you. I feel like I'm just kind of seeing the end of a Black Mirror episode and nodding at how, yeah, that's fucked up, but it makes sense. The whole post isn't up anymore, and also, like, I don't know how much of this video I even want to spend reading self-pitying bullshit about Scooter Braun. I kind of want to move along. But in the post, Scooter mentioned how his wife had gotten a phone call, and again, death threats are very bad. But again, the ex-wife put herself in the middle of it and attacked Taylor Swift for no reason on socials the day her husband bought all of Taylor's work. She shouldn't have gotten death threats, and also she shouldn't have jumped into the smear campaign. And again, the person these people are asking for sympathy for is Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift, who famously carries around wound dressing because so many of her stalkers are armed and violent. I think if Taylor Swift could control the portion of her fans who are violent and dangerous, she wouldn't need to ride around in suitcases and stuff. So pretending like she was attacking Scooter or asking her audience to attack Scooter is genuinely absurd. We saw what she wrote, and then we saw how they twisted it. I'm mad. I'm so mad. I'm so mad I had to talk to Kat Tenbarge again. So as far as I'm concerned, after it was announced that Scooter had bought Taylor's masters, there were kind of two phases of this Darvo campaign. And the first one was before she started her re-recordings project, and this was mostly indirect on Scooter Braun's part, because it was Justin Bieber and Scooter's then wife and other clients putting things out on Instagram and stuff. And I just wanted to talk about that a bit. I remember this going down. I do feel like in the court of public opinion, in this one circumstance, Taylor is a little bit more understood as the victim compared to a lot of others where it's been, like, to me, equally clear that she's a victim. Like, I'm focusing on these negative pieces of pushback that she received because it's useful for the video and for the narrative about Scooter. But I do feel like, you know, I don't think it's super Swifty-pilled to say at the time that she largely got support about this.
Totally. I completely agree. And this was like the summer of 2019, which was a very pivotal career in Taylor Swift's fandom and in her career, even before the reveal of what had happened with Scooter. And I feel like because this is the Lover era, and I feel like the Lover era, and you see this in even the symbolism in the music videos, it's like it was a direct, like, coming out of Reputation era. And Reputation era was so successful for her. And I'm glad that it was, because I feel like she deserved to have that kind of an era after going through this massive darvo betrayal campaign from the public. But Reputation, I think it gave the Swiftie fandom a reason to be proud of her again. And also it provided another side to this very one-sided PR reputation nightmare for Taylor Swift. It was like her response to that. And it came in such a form that was easy to root for. It came in the form of this amazing album. And so I feel like the Swiftie fandom was already in a good place. And she had put songs on that album that were popular and were successful, and enough time had passed, because I feel like with these types of celebrity controversies, a big factor is just like the public's memory is so short-lived, for better or for worse. And in this case, it was like she had had a successful album. She was preparing to roll out another successful album in Lover. She had this long-term relationship that was going really well, that everyone thought was really sweet. She was dipping her toe into like progressive politics, and that is something that had been widely applauded up until this point. So all of these things were going well for her in the public, and at the same time, Justin Bieber and Kanye West and Scooter Braun and some of the people associated with them in the celebrity sphere were, you know, as they're perpetually controversial. People are perpetually mad at Kanye West, and frequently for good reason. And so I feel like when she dropped this bombshell, this Tumblr post where she outlines like Kanye did this horrible thing to me, it was violating, it was violent, and now Scooter is behind this acquisition of my music. I think that was just a very powerful moment where people found a lot of sympathy for her, not only because of the events that had already transpired, but because of the significance of having her artistry taken from her and like repurposed in to be bought, to be owned by this man who had hurt her in this way.
Yeah, I think that the way that Taylor has a real gift for like putting things into terms that are very easily understandable. I referenced this earlier in the video. I said, you know, I think it's a moral win for like the concept of artists owning their own masters that Taylor got hers back.
Yes.
Because I think she not only opened the conversation, as she was saying, she was attempting to do on purpose. She was opening this conversation about the industry. But you know, people like me, I had no idea that artists don't typically own their own work. I didn't know that until she started talking about this. And there have to be so many artists who signed new recording contracts since 2019 who had that thought of Taylor Swift not owning their masters in the back of their mind and saying, hey, actually, this is what I want. And so I think like she was able to do that in a way where she constructed a narrative around it, which was just really cool. One of the letters that Scott Borchetta leaked that Scott thought made it look like Taylor was like willingly walking away from all of her masters and stuff. She says directly like, I want to use the leverage that I have right now to affect positive change. And I think that she's been pretty clear-eyed about that multiple times in her career too. Like we saw that with the Spotify deal. We saw that with her signing on with Universal Music Group. And it is kind of a tired point, but I do feel like if any male singer did that, there would be so much conversation around like what a good guy he was, what a team player, how much he cares about other artists. But because it's Taylor, crickets.
Yeah, it is such a like illustration of how a man can do so little to be seen as a good guy and to have that hero, to be like him being a hero harped upon in the public. But women are rarely considered heroes, especially the more that we know about them. And we know so much about Taylor Swift that for most people, this makes her too murky. And like the positive attributes and the positive things that she has done can never be viewed independently. It has to be like every woman has to be morally complex and morally gray. And Taylor Swift is a great example of this. And I also feel like with women in the public eye, you're only ever as good as either the last thing you did and also how other people think of you. So if other people have a negative opinion of you, even if that's not founded on anything true, that reflects on you. And that's seen as a legitimate stain on you, even if you didn't do anything to cause it, and even if you did nothing wrong. And so women in the public eye are consistently haunted by this and have to work so hard to do charitable acts, to do good deeds, to do do selfless things, and only then can they be seen as good, and only for a short period of time, because then it's like you have to consistently keep proving yourself.
And also, I don't, you have that letter where Justin Bieber posted on his Instagram, and he's saying, it seems to me like the reason why you posted that was because you wanted your audience to bully. And then we have, Scooter's ex-wife, the thing she said that always sticks with me is like, the world has been watching as you pick up and drop friends like wilted flowers. And it's like, that's because the world has been watching her whole life.
Yeah.
It is so normal to have friends who you hang out with for a while and then stop hanging out with, but it is a like tabloid cycle for Taylor
Yes.
Swift.
Yes. The people who liked that Instagram post from Yale Cohen included like Kendall Jenner. And it's like, the Kardashians, we've also watched them pick up and discard people throughout their careers in a much more like objectionable way than we've publicly seen Taylor Swift do. Taylor Swift has certainly like gone through different friend groups. She's commented on this in her music and in her media. Like, there have been evolutions throughout her adult life where like you see her with people and then you don't see her with them anymore. But the way that the Kardashians have like taken people into their lives and dropped them is so much more, there's so much more public conflict there. I think about like, I believe this was after, maybe it was before, but it's like the Kylie Jenner, Jordan Woods friendship fallout, where Jordan was like having some sort of relationship with Khloe Kardashian's, like the father of her child. That was so much more of a like, people really criticized the Kardashians for like piling on to Jordan Woods and being so cruel to her throughout that. Taylor Swift has not really had that kind of a fallout with her female friends, yet these same people will still view her as the bad guy, and she still is given this extremely negative characterization and association, despite other people in her industry doing so much worse. And at the end of the day, like you said, when you're in the public spotlight your whole life, you're going to the degree that Taylor Swift is, you're going to see the worst things that this person has done. And I always find it remarkable. I'm someone who can be very critical of Taylor Swift, and despite being a huge fan, I've been very critical of her over certain things in the past. But she is on a completely different plane than like 90% of celebrities in terms of public controversies and things she's been accused of doing. And despite being so like not bland, but like in terms of her public personal fallouts, like there hasn't been anything, there's been like no violence. Like that is already a bar that a lot of celebrities do not cross. And so for the way that she's treated is so disproportionate. It is so disproportionate. And for them to call her a bully is just really like, how convenient after she has gone through this enormous sustained campaign of public harassment and public mockery and public humiliation, for them to twist that around on her and characterize her as the bully.
It's so frustrating. And it's, again, I know we talk about this all the time, both on my channel and privately. One of those things where once you know what Darvo is, you can't look at that and see anything but Darvo. Like, it's very clearly they are reversing the victim and the offender. They are saying she's the bully because she's sad that she got bullied and she said something about it. And
Yeah.
even in the statements where Taylor arguably could be asking her fans to do something, like when she was posting her open letter about how they weren't going to approve her playing her music at the AMAs or in her Netflix documentary, she said, please let Scooter and Scott know how you feel about this. And the next thing that she said, though, was, I know that you guys are fans of artists who work with them and care about this kind of thing. Let them know. It wasn't, go tell Scooter Braun you're going to kill him. You know? Like,
yes. And I think like there is such a desire to pin fan behavior on the person who they're a fan of. And this is a nuanced and complicated topic, right? Because it's like there have been cases where I have been very critical of artists and people in the public eye for just not taking into account like how they can expect their fans to behave. But again, the sort of outrage around that and the judgment around that is oftentimes very disproportionate, and women are made the villain of this phenomenon much more than men are, even when male celebrities use their fans for significantly more insidious purposes. There are so many examples, new examples every year, of male celebrities getting their fans to attack one of their victims or someone who has spoken out against their behavior in various ways. You see fans rallied all the time to serve as like an army in the exact opposite direction. They're used to smear victims, to harass and bully people. And in this case, it's like, I think Taylor did want to use the power of her fan base that she had been able to cultivate over the years. But in her eyes, and I would argue this is true, it was more so in the vein of correcting an injustice versus perpetuating an injustice. It was like, I'm going to use my position. And at this point, she feels as though so many things are out of her control because they are. Like the decision of who is going to own her music, that is a decision that has been taken from her. That is like a form of autonomy that has been taken from her. But what she knows she has in her corner, which is the only thing that has protected her throughout her career and allowed her career to flourish in the way that it has, is her fan base. So of course, when the industry and the gatekeepers within this industry have failed her, she's going to rely on the people for whom she has always depended on so much. And I do not doubt that fans did all kinds of heinous acts against Scooter Braun and his family. I do not doubt it. But I think that I agree with you. She wasn't actually telling them to do that. And I also think that it's just a bit rich for them to complain after using their power. And Justin Bieber knows his audience and his fans, and Kanye West knows his audience and his fans are going to go after this woman in likely a much more misogynistic way than Taylor Swift's fans are going to go after other people in their male orbit.
Yeah, I think when you said that there's more of like an expectation of responsibility for women to control their fan bases, that really hasn't occurred to me. But like even fan bases that are primarily comprised of women, like for example, never in my life did I hear anybody say, "Oh, those One Direction boys need to control their fandom." I
Yes.
never heard that. That was never their responsibility.
Yes. Yes. That's such a good point. Like, when you have all the way dating back to Beatlemania, when you have big fandoms of young women, it is always their responsibility to control themselves versus the objects of their desire to not engage with them in a way that elicits this type of reaction. Like Harry Styles curates his fan base and sort of manages that relationship between him and his fans much in the same way that Taylor Swift does. Like Taylor Swift, I think, is really well known, and rightfully so, for building such a strong relationship with her fans. And she is a pioneer in many of the ways that she has built that relationship. But she is far from the only artist to do this. She's not reinventing the wheel in the way that she engages with her fan base. She's just particularly good at it. And like factors both within and without of her control have created this phenomenon of like what the Swiftie fandom is. But women, no matter what, it's always going to be women who are responsible, whether that's like the female singer or the female fans. Like they're always going to be the ones who receive the most societal backlash for their enthusiasm or for whatever activities they're taking. And it's also like even the way that female fans are viewed as a monolith is different from the way that male fans are viewed, because the iconic traditional example is like how sports fans are perceived versus like teenage girl fans of musicians or just women fans of anything. And it's like when after sports games, when male fans set things on fire, vandalize public property, like climb telephone poles, etc., that's not viewed as an indictment of all sports fans. And oftentimes it's not even viewed negatively. It's like they're just having fun because their team won the game. And it's like if Taylor Swift fans were to act like that, it would be considered an international disaster. The Swifties would all be judged as a monolith, and Taylor Swift would be blamed for it. But they're not even acting that way. And like, no one blames athletes or the people who are in charge of like sports marketing for the way that sports fans behave after games.
Yeah. Yeah, that's such a good point. I think like that's also something that kind of I think there was a lot of excitement around eras, and then also at a certain point there was like a level of like backlash and exhaustion. But
Yes.
even though I never went to eras or anything, I never got tired of seeing all of these posts coming up on my timeline of these women going and having fun and like dressing up. Like she created this event and this like costume party for her fans. And I think that like it's really cool. And as you said, she's not reinventing the wheel. There's lots of stadium tours. Like there's
Mm-hmm,
even
mm-hmm.
other stadium tours that have similar things where there's like one or two things that are slightly different each night. But she managed to do that in such a way that just like really increased the already like rising public goodwill that she had. Um,
Yes.
and you made this point a little while ago, but I also, something that I think is kind of forgotten is like Reputation was her most successful tour before
Yeah.
Tortured Poets. I mean, before Eras. So sometimes people think of it as like Reputation. I think people, because they didn't maybe like it when it first came out sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
people think that it is not an album that was like as beloved as it was. But like I agree that it was providing the Swifties who were already there and who were going to stay such a narrative to grab onto. And then, I personally loved Lover. I think people have really mixed opinions on how they feel about Lover as an
Yes.
album. But I thought that that was a really fun rollout. And that was kind of like, I've heard every Taylor Swift album while it was still new.
Yeah.
Like pretty much pretty much since Fearless on. Um, but I wasn't paying attention really to the rollout for like 1989. I remember being vaguely aware when 1989 came out that like secret sessions were a thing.
Yes.
But I wasn't like a super like plugged in Swiftie. And by the time
Yes.
she started teasing for Lover, I had gotten so into Reputation that I was like riveted to all of this rollout. Um,
Yeah.
which I think is also part of why I remember the Masters heist so clearly, because it does really feel like they threw this at her in the middle of her promo on purpose. Like there is
Yes.
absolutely no way that Scott knew at 9 p.m. the night before when he texted Taylor that that's when that was going to happen. He must have known that months ago. And so, I think that the fact that she was still able to put out Lover,
Mm-hmm.
and then obviously, she was going to do Lover Fest, and then that ended up getting canceled because of coronavirus. But I think that there's so much to dig into, and that
Mm-hmm.
because she had this whole era that she didn't get to tour on with Lover, and then she also adds Folklore and Evermore, and she's got like all of this hype before the re-recordings are even introduced and
Yeah.
she's on eras. Like that is wild. It is wild that she's able as like a 30 something year old woman to go on a greatest hits tour and like break all of these records and stuff.
It is so staggering. Like, it's also staggering to me that during 1989, I mean, Taylor has had so many eras that for anyone else would be the peak of not only their career, but be like a generational moment in music. Fearless was a what would be to many people their peak, and it was a generational moment in music. Album of the year. Then you have 1989, which is would be the peak of anyone else's career and was a generational moment in music. Album of the year. Then she's not done yet. That's before. Like, all of that has now been exponentially surpassed with the way that Taylor's career has taken its path since really Reputation. And particularly in like a 2020, like a post 2020 context, just like the way that it went from casual fans and casual listeners compared to the most intense Swifties to now today, it's like everyone is a really intense Swiftie. Like the casual listening of Taylor Swift has almost like fallen away. And you see that just like how you were describing with the rollout for 1989. I too was not at that point like cognizant or aware or keeping up with all of the intricacies of Taylor's career. But the most dedicated Swifties absolutely were. And Secret Sessions was one of those things where I feel like it's kind of a pioneering practice that now you see more pop artists do. And so like the album 1989 went on to have so many top number one hits, which made it an album shared by like the majority of the population. But before those hits went to number one, you had like the Swifties, who were the most dedicated to the Easter eggs and the rollout and all of those things. Then with like Reputation and Lover, you're bringing more people into that population of Swifties, but things went supersonic when she started doing the re-recordings. And I feel like Red and the re-recording of Red is such a good example of this, because when Red came out for the first time, Taylor was actually at a relative like low point in her career, still doing incredible, like still one of the biggest pop stars. But compared to everything else she's done in her career, like not as many people were listening to Red. But when Red was re-recorded, like All Too Well 10-minute version went number one. The original All Too Well didn't even go number one. Like the original All Too Well was like a deep cut for the fans. But at the point where Taylor Swift is in her career now, it is a global phenomenon that is now shared by the majority. And that is really staggering. And I think the re-recording and the arc of like Kanye to Scooter to re-recordings to now, that was the meta narrative that so much of her career's exponential success was tied to.
Yeah, and I think there's something interesting too, where like at the beginning of her career, the meta narrative was like, this is your best friend Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
She's letting you into her life. You're seeing her go on these dates with these boys. Look, she's walking around with Taylor Lautner.
Yes.
Look, she's your best friend. She's mailing you things. And like that was also very successful and very useful. But it's really interesting to see the narrative change where like when you think of Taylor Swift, there's no pretense at like doing a girl next door thing anymore. Like she is a global
Yes.
superstar writing songs about being a global superstar, and yet they are still
Yes.
so relatable. They are still so able to get her audience engaged. It's so fucking cool.
It's so cool. And it's really astonishing that she has this ability for fans to interpret her music in two ways. And like, this is also how I listen to Taylor Swift. There's like two interpretations. It's the first time you're listening to the song that she puts out, you're trying to decipher and discern what in Taylor Swift's life is this about? Like you're listening to a song and on Tortured Poets Department, it was like, is this about Maddie Healy? Is this song really about Maddie Healy? But then this, like, as you listen to the song more and more, you're like, okay, I've come to accept and process that this song is about Maddie Healy, but also I'm now listening to the lyrics and I'm thinking about my own life and how this song and the emotions and the lyrics relate to my own life. And that is so fascinating. And I find it so fascinating that Reputation was able to have this effect too, despite the circumstances that she was living through and singing about on that album being so unique and rare to her. And I will never forget like where I was when Look What You Made Me Do dropped. Because I was like seated and ready to hear that song, her comeback song after everything that had happened. And a lot of people have like looked down on this song, Look What You Made Me Do, for a number of reasons. But to me, it has always been a masterpiece, even if not like sonically, like taste is subjective, but lyrically and thematically, to me, it has always been a masterpiece because I'm like, there's something so compelling about pop music, about superstardom. I feel this way about some of Britney Spears' music as well. Like the song Piece of Me by Britney Spears is like cousins with Look What You Made Me Do, because you have two women who are in this position of fame that almost no one has ever experienced or will ever experience again. And to hear them sing about it is just, it's so engaging and thrilling to get a peek into their mindset. And somehow, I don't know how they do it, but somehow the music is still kind of relatable. And I think that for Taylor and for Britney as well, some of that relatability comes from like, none of us have experienced what they have experienced, but for women listeners in particular, it's like we can relate to people treating us differently because we're women, and we can relate to the expectations that are unfair that like women are held and subjected to. So I think that is where some of the relatability comes from.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's really a testament to like a level of skill in songwriting and storytelling that
Yes.
Reputation and Tortured Poets can make not just a bunch of people, but like a ton of people, enough people to chart, enough people to fill stadium seats, think about
Yes.
their own life, even though like they have not had their masters stolen by Scooter Braun.
Yes, yes, or gone through this like crazy
Snake Gate, yeah.
rebound relationship.
Right, right,
Although a
yeah.
lot of people have, and I think that her relatability also stems from the fact that people have messy relationships, and she sings about messy relationships so beautifully.
Yeah, she really like it just gets to something so like human and like universal.
Yes.
And I think that that's also why I'm kind of defensive of people who are really dismissive of her work because even if again like you said I don't need people to like it. I
Mm-hmm.
just need people to like understand that there is an art there and also clearly there is a strategy there and it's a strategy that
Yes.
works very well for her.
Yes, I like personally subjectively love her music, but I understand why people don't. But I think objectively, anyone who has had this type of success is interesting, even if you hate them. Like I think Taylor Swift is not as easily hateable as other people who have had this level of success. But even if you do hate them, I think it's still just like fascinating and compelling and engaging to look at why this person is so successful.
So I've already mentioned Taylor's Billboard Woman of the Decade acceptance speech and showed you a very little bit of it, but I want to talk about it a bit more here too. In December, she was interviewed for the award and officially announced her plans to re-record. She had mentioned it already, as we've seen, but this was an exciting confirmation and one we waited quite a while for a payoff on, because we still don't get to talk about the re-recordings just yet. They didn't happen until 2021. But I wanted to talk a little bit more about this Woman of the Decade interview because I want to clarify my earlier point when I said that I view Taylor buying her masters back as a moral win for the concept of artists owning their own work. Taylor was outspoken about this on purpose and to great effect. This is from the article. During a wide-ranging conversation, Billboard's Woman of the Decade expresses hope that she can help make the lives of creators a little easier in the years to come, and a belief that her behind-the-scenes strides will be as integral to her legacy as her biggest singles. New artists and producers and writers need work, and they need to be likable and get booked in sessions, and they can't make noise. But if I can, then I'm going to, promises Swift. This is where being impossibly famous can be a very good thing. I know that it seems like I'm very loud about this, she says, but it's because someone has to be. We need to think about how we handle master recordings because this isn't it. When I stood up and talked about this, I saw a lot of fans saying, wait, the creators of this work do not own their work ever? I spent 10 years of my life trying rigorously to purchase my masters outright and was then denied that opportunity, and I just don't want that to happen to another artist if I can help it. I want to at least raise my hand and say, this is something that an artist should be able to earn back over the course of their deal, not as a renegotiation ploy, and something that artists should maybe have the first right of refusal to buy. God, I would have paid so much for them, anything to own my work that was an actual sale option, but it wasn't given to me. Thankfully, there's power in writing your music. Every week we get a dozen sync requests to use Shake It Off in some advertisement or blank space in some movie trailer, and we say no to every single one of them. And the reason I'm re-recording my music next year is because I do want my music to live on. I do want it to be in movies, I do want it to be in commercials, but I only want that if I own it. And in her acceptance speech a day after the article was published, she spoke about it more.
Lately, there's been a new shift that has affected me personally and that I feel is a potentially harmful force in our industry. And as your resident loud person, I feel the need to bring it up. And that is the unregulated world of private equity coming in and buying up our music as if it is real estate, as if it's an app or a shoe line. This just happened to me without my approval, consultation, or consent. After I was denied the chance to purchase my music outright, my entire catalog was sold to Scooter Braun's Ithaca Holdings in a deal that I'm told was funded by the Soros family, 23 Capital, and the Carlyle Group. Yet, to this day, none of these investors have ever bothered to contact me or my team directly to perform their due diligence on their investment in me, to ask how I might feel about the new owner of my art, the music I wrote, the videos I created, photos of me, my handwriting, my album designs. And of course, Scooter never contacted me or my team to discuss it prior to the sale, or even when it was announced. I'm fairly certain he knew exactly how I would feel about it, though. And let me just say that the definition of the toxic male privilege in our industry is people saying, but he's always been nice to me, when I'm raising valid concerns about artists and their rights to own their music. And of course he's nice to you. If you're in this room, you have something he needs.
I have a lot of respect for this. I think she was able to put it in a way that made sense, that made the concerns clear. And I know a lot of people see the re-recordings as just a shameless cash grab, but I can't help but to see them as much more than that. I see them as a way for Taylor to reclaim her own work, to push back against this particularly violating experience, but also, as she's been saying, to effect positive change in her industry. So only a few things happened in 2020. I'm just pulling from the Billboard timeline here. February 28th, Billboard estimated that the price of her first 6 albums doubled since Scooter Braun acquired them. Big Machine also published a stripped 2008 live album, which Taylor Swift publicly disapproved of. And I guess they were not able to recoup as much of their investment as they wanted, because on November 16th of 2020, Taylor Swift's masters were sold again. This was to Shamrock Holdings, and Taylor posted about it on Twitter. Been getting a lot of questions about the recent sale of my old masters. I hope this clears things up. I wanted to check in and update you guys. As you know, for the past year, I've been actively trying to regain ownership of my master recordings. With that goal in mind, my team attempted to enter into negotiations with Scooter Braun. Scooter's team wanted me to sign an ironclad NDA stating that I would never say another word about Scooter Braun unless it was positive before we could even look at the financial records of Big Machine, which is always the first step in a purchase of this nature. So I would have to sign a document that would silence me forever before I could even have a chance to bid on my own work. My legal team said that this is absolutely not normal and that they've never seen an NDA like this presented unless it was to silence an assault accuser by paying them off. Cringe face emoji. He would never even quote my team for a price. These master recordings were not for sale to me. A few weeks ago, my team received a letter from a private equity company called Shamrock Holdings letting us know that they had bought 100% of my music, videos, and album art from Scooter Braun. This was the second time my music had been sold without my knowledge. The letter told me that they wanted to reach out before the sale to let me know, but that Scooter Braun had required that they make no contact with me or my team, or the deal would be off. As soon as we started communication with Shamrock, I learned that under their terms, Scooter Braun will continue to profit off my old musical catalog for many years. I was hopeful and open to the possibility of a partnership with Shamrock, but Scooter's participation is a non-starter for me. I have recently begun re-recording my older music, and it has already proven to be both exciting and creatively fulfilling. I have plenty of surprises in store. Sunglasses emoji. I want to thank you guys for supporting me through this ongoing saga, and I can't wait for you to hear what I've been dreaming up. I love you guys, and I'm just gonna keep cruising, as they say. Taylor. P.S. For transparency and clarification, I have included the letter of response I sent on October 28th, 2020 to the private equity group who purchased my music. Dear Patrick, Jason, and Laura, thank you so very much for your letter. Upon reading your kind words, I was thrilled with the idea of working with people who value art and understand how much my life's work means to me. I immediately began to plan all the ways we could work together on expanding and protecting my music while maximizing the outcomes for all involved, especially my fans. So, regardless of the fact that it was the second time my masters have been sold without my knowledge while I was actively trying to purchase them, your letter brought me a great deal of hope for my musical legacy and our possible future together. This is why I was so disappointed when I learned that under the terms of your acquisition, Scooter Braun and Ithaca Holdings would continue to receive many years of future financial reward from my music masters, music videos, and album artwork. If I support you as you request, I will be contributing to these future payments to Scooter Braun and Ithaca Holdings. I simply cannot in good conscience bring myself to be involved in benefiting Scooter Braun's interests directly or indirectly. As a result, I cannot currently entertain being partners with you. It's a shame to know that I will now be unable to help grow the future of these past works, and it pains me very deeply to have to remain separated from the music I spent over a decade creating. But this is a sacrifice I will have to make to keep Scooter Braun out of my life. I'm very sorry he has put you in this position. I wish this could have had a better outcome, and please do let me know if your firm is ever completely independent from Scooter Braun and his associates. I feel the need to be very transparent with you. I will be going forward with my original re-recording schedule, and will be embarking on that effort soon. I know this will diminish the value of my old masters, but I hope you will understand that this is my only way of regaining the sense of pride I once had when hearing songs from my first 6 albums, and also allowing my fans to listen to those albums without feelings of guilt for benefiting Scooter. Sincerely, Taylor Swift. But from here, she pretty much moved into re-recording mode. We had Folklore and Evermore that came out somewhere within this timeline, but the first of the re-recordings was April 9th, 2021, when Fearless, Taylor's version, came out. And between these re-recordings coming out, we see even more attempts at Darvo from Scooter Braun. You know I had to talk to Kat about that too.
It's funny when social media gets involved and then, like, you know, avid fan bases, like, it doesn't matter what context is anymore, right? It doesn't matter what details are according to people. It's all crazy things. And one person online saying the devil works hard, but Scooter Braun works harder. Like, that's crazy to me.
Yeah,
but like,
listen,
how do you even respond to something?
You don't, because I don't know that person.
The first stop on the re-recordings era of the Scooter Braun Darvo campaign is an interview that he did with Variety when they named him Music Mogul of the Year in 2021. Following his 2019 purchase of Big Machine, and with it the rights to the master recordings of Taylor Swift's first 6 studio albums, Braun faced a public drubbing from the pop superstar and her legion of fans who, arguably at the singer's behest, took to social media to label him a bully for stealing her hard-earned IP without reasonable terms for its return. Swift has been fastidiously, and very publicly, recreating her older albums one by one as re-recording restrictions expire. Braun's defenders say that it's all just business, and certainly that factored into his decision to sell the Swift assets to Shamrock for north of $300 million last year. The deal yielded him more than $160 million, and, equally valuable, Braun was able to divest himself of the Swift drama and relentless trolling. And if that really was so valuable to him, you would think Taylor Swift wouldn't come up so often in his press around this time, but oh, she did. From that same article, clearly you're referencing the Big Machine acquisition and Taylor Swift's reaction to it. How do you view what went down in retrospect? I regret it, and it makes me sad that Taylor had that reaction to the deal. All of what happened has been very confusing and not based on anything factual. I don't know what story she was told. I asked for her to sit down with me several times, but she refused. I offered to sell her the catalog back and went under NDA, but her team refused. It all seems very unfortunate. Open communication is important and can lead to understanding. She and I only met briefly 3 or 4 times in the past, and all our interactions were really friendly and kind. I find her to be an incredibly talented artist and wish her nothing but the best. Some say it's just business, but it felt personal in tone. Not even a question. That's how softball this interview is. The thing that struck me the worst is the word bully. I'm firmly against anyone ever being bullied. I always try to lead with appreciation and understanding. The one thing I'm proudest of in that moment was that my artists and team stood by me. They know my character and my truth. That meant a lot to me. In the long run, I'm happy for my life's work to be the legacy I leave behind. And this is actually something he brought up in another interview that I watched. He really likes how many people wrote those passive-aggressive public letters to Taylor Swift for him.
Beyond that, you know, I'm moving on with my life to do the best things I can possibly do and treat people well. And if people don't want to believe that, great. I think one of the proudest things for me is that when all that went down, the people that knew me said that is not true. And I didn't even have to say it for myself.
And that Music Mogul interview is, of course, not the only time Taylor Swift would come up in Scooter's press. In fact, in 2021, despite being so glad to be done with it, Scooter kept talking about it all the time. Like in April, he spoke about it to MSNBC.
I completely understand where she was coming from. You know, I think the Beatles probably felt the same way when Michael Jackson bought their publishing. The person who owned Taylor's masters throughout her career was not myself. And when I was buying a record label, I actually said to that group, at any point, if she comes back and wants to be part of this conversation, please let me know, because I wouldn't do this deal. I was shown an email that's now public now, where she stated that she had decided to move on from that negotiation and wasn't interested in doing that deal anymore. So I thought at the time, okay, I'm in the clear, let's do this deal. And when I made the purchase, I was excited to work with all the artists who had catalogs there. And I was always open to selling back people their catalogs along the way at a fair market value. And I did present that. I don't speak about this publicly because I think people have said certain things. Those narratives aren't necessarily true. I think there's a lot of facts out there. But at the end of the day, I think artists should actually have ownership.
He would also say a lot of the same to NPR when he spoke to them in September of that same year.
Curious, if you can go back in time, Scott, would you have done it differently?
Yes, I would have. I learned an important lesson from that. So when I ended up selling our company recently, I told myself this time around, everyone is going to participate. Everyone's going to know. And obviously I was under NDAs then too. So when I did that deal that you're referring to with Big Machine, I was under a very strict NDA with the gentleman who owned it. And I couldn't tell any artist. I wasn't allowed to. I wasn't legally allowed to.
Yeah.
What I told him was, hey, if any of the artists want to come back and buy into this, you have to let me know. And he shared a letter with me that's out there publicly that the artist you're referring to said, I don't want to participate in my masters. I've decided to not make this deal, blah, blah. So that was the idea I was under. I was excited to work with every artist on the label. So when we finalized the deal, I started making phone calls to say, hey, I'm a part of this. And before I could even do that, I made 4 phone calls. I started to do those phone calls. All hell broke loose. So I think a lot of things got lost in translation. I think that when you have a conflict with someone, it's very hard to resolve it if you're not willing to have a conversation. So the regret I have there is that I made the assumption that everyone, once the deal was done, was going to have a conversation with me, see my intent, see my character, and say, great, let's be in business together. And I made that assumption with people that I didn't know.
Yeah.
And I learned an important lesson from that I can never make that assumption again. I can't put myself in a place of, arrogance to think that someone would just be willing to have a conversation and be excited to work with me. I don't know these people. I think in any conflict, you can say, I didn't do anything. It's their fault. And you could be right. You could be justified. And you could say, this is unfair. I'm being treated unfairly. Or you can say, okay, I'm being treated unfairly. I don't like how this is feeling. I can't fix this. So how am I going to look at it and learn from it? And I didn't appreciate how that all went down. I thought it was unfair, but I also understand from the other side, they probably felt it was unfair too.
Yeah.
So I choose to look at it as a learning lesson, a growing lesson. And I wish everyone involved well. And I'm rooting for everyone to win because I don't believe in rooting for people to lose.
During the re-recording project, Braun started to do his own press and talk about lessons he's learned and things he would do differently. And there's a new piece of this narrative that he's introducing now that none of the people who wrote letters defending him thought to mention. Because I think if it's true that he was under an NDA, Justin Bieber's post would have said he wanted to call you and he couldn't because of the NDA. It didn't say that.
Yeah.
But we do see him kind of trying to turn things around and push the blame over onto Scott Borchetta, which I think is interesting because I feel like Scott Borchetta kind of gets out of this conversation at a certain point.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think that we have any reason to believe that Taylor has forgiven Scott Borchetta, but I feel like the Swifties hate Scooter Braun much more than they hate Scott Borchetta, even though it was kind of the two of them scheming together. And even though it was I feel like Scott Borchetta's betrayal was the more heartbreaking one to her because he was her
Yes.
former manager and a friend and partner.
Yes, 1,000,000%. And I think that is what she's singing about on My Tears Ricochet, which is a much more emotionally devastating song than the more sassy quips about Scooter and his wife. And so I agree with you. And I think that Scooter is kind of disadvantaged in terms of how much negativity he received because he was already publicly known, whereas Scott Borchetta is much more of a deep cut. Only Swifties, I think, even necessarily know who Scott Borchetta is, or people who are following this back and forth very closely, whereas Scooter Braun at this point is almost a household name and is so closely associated with people like Justin Bieber, who had been very controversial himself. And I find it so convenient also that, like you said, Scooter says, oh, I was under an NDA. I definitely don't think an NDA would be worth withholding that information at the time. I just think he would have broke it. Even if the NDA were real, I just think it would have been worth it to break it. This is not a man who's strapped for cash we're talking about. And his reputation was under such a severe backlash that I don't think that he or his allies in the industry who were trying to defend him would have neglected to mention this.
All artists have royalties coming to them from their masters. And if they want an opportunity to buy them, they should have that opportunity. And I'm completely open to that conversation. I will also tell you, though, to have that conversation, you have to have a conversation. You need to be able to sit in front of someone and have dialogue. And what you can't do is say that you want something and then never, ever sit down at the table to have an actual dialogue. And I wish everyone well. And in fact, what I learned from that experience was that I would never do a deal again where everyone wasn't involved and saying, yes, I agree with this deal. I made the assumption that everyone would be excited about us buying Big Machine. And that didn't come to be. So I think that Taylor has every right to re-record. She has every right to pursue her master's, and I wish her nothing but well. And I have zero interest in saying anything bad about her because I've never said anything bad about her in the past, and I won't start to now. The only thing I disagree with is weaponizing a fan base. The artists I work with have very large fan bases. You don't do that. It's very dangerous. There's people within that fan base who have mental health issues. There's families involved, and I think that's very, very dangerous. And I know the artists that sometimes will weaponize, or even the artists who say, I know what it's like to be ridiculed. So I think that that's a very dangerous thing, and I think that there's a responsibility with the fan base.
And you think that has happened?
That's all I'll say about that.
So we see him in these interview clips doing a lot of the same language that we saw in those letters, which kind of makes me feel like those letters were written by committee, you know? Like,
yes.
maybe possibly Justin Bieber saw this go down and he was like, I need to defend Scooter, but I feel like Scooter might have been like, hey man, can you post something? And so, you know, we see a lot of this same language. Again, we see her being accused directly in as many words of weaponizing her fan base.
Yes.
And I think that that is particularly interesting to hear Scooter running around and saying when we know that the idea of accusing Taylor and Blake of weaponizing feminism and weaponizing the Swiftie fan base is present in the tag PR crisis document for Justin Baldoni.
Absolutely. And I remember what I was going to say. It's like, I think that when Kanye began this whole campaign against Taylor, and I think that when you had Kim Kardashian and Justin Bieber and Scooter Braun join in on this over the years to various degrees of like public facingness, I think they just really assumed that they would be able to conquer Taylor Swift in the court of public opinion because it had worked previously in the summer of Snakegate. And secondly, because I think they just thought that their ability to dominate her as men would ultimately win out. And I do think that based on the public information we have, like Justin Bieber's Instagram post, we know that that's what they were trying to do. They were very plainly and publicly attempting to humiliate her and subjugate her and put her in her place. And that didn't work. And only after it did not work, which the only reason she was able to avoid this is because of the strength of her fan base and the people who looked up to her in the music industry and her allies within the music industry. But overwhelmingly, it's because she has built this fervent, supportive base of mostly young women. And they did not think, they thought they would be able to crush that, and they couldn't. So after they failed, that's when they start to come out and say, like, the story that the public heard wasn't entirely true. And I just think it's very ironic that that they blame the fan base for being the problem, when if that fan base hadn't been here, maybe they would have been able to to essentially overpower her in the public sphere, and they would have been able to successfully humiliate her. And they've been able to do it with women like Blake Lively, who didn't have as passionate or fervent as a fan base as Taylor Swift.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, there's also, you know, because Scooter talked so much, Scooter was the one who was helping to make the connection between Blake Lively and Taylor Swift, kind of like in, you know, I think it was August 2024, height of the smear campaign. We had Taylor Swift inviting Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively to a party that she threw, and Scooter posted on his Instagram and was like, where's my invitation? Hashtag have a laugh. You know, and they're constantly doing these things where like they are picking and pressing, and they're also very intentionally setting narratives, but then they're like, oh, I'm just kidding though. You know, you have Justin Bieber posting a picture of the moon and he puts Bad Blood playing, but he does the version Scooter was still getting royalties from at the time. Like, you have Kim Kardashian doing TikToks with her daughter, and they're both listening to Taylor Swift songs. Like, these people constantly want this narrative, and then the second that she responds to it, they say, you're crazy. That narrative that you're telling doesn't exist.
Yes, yes. And I do not think it's a stretch that these men were threatened by her prominence and her success in the music industry. And that is at the root of so much of their hate and harassment. I do not think it is a stretch to say that so much of why they hate Taylor Swift so much and tried to humiliate her, and in some cases were able to humiliate her, is because she is a powerful, successful woman. And that is an objective fact, whether you like her or not, that she is very powerful and very successful and accomplished things that men in the industry feel threatened by and don't think that she should be able to have. And I also don't think it's a coincidence that, like, Scooter Braun is clearly obsessed with Taylor Swift. They're not just like running into each other because Hollywood is such a small town. Although in some ways I think that it is. I just think that like Scooter has built her into his own psyche in a way. And that's not something she asked him to do. It's just a result of the fact that, like, this is a man who's very aggressive about wanting his clients to dominate in the world of pop music. And she is a factor that is outside of his control. And so I think that is another reason why he is so aggressive toward her. And I just think that, like, throughout these different high profile cases, you see so much overlap of who the players are. And I think that like it's not a conspiracy to be like they're going after very powerful women in this industry for a reason.
The way that he and also Justin and the wife, are insisting, talk to us in private. We're free to talk privately anytime, as if they cannot work a deal through her team, as if they have any kind of like expectation of full access to this woman because he thinks he bought her.
Yes.
He shared that Instagram post, when your friend buys at Taylor Swift. Like he believed that he should have had access to her. And it's so clear that it ate him the fuck up that he did not.
100%, 100%. And the language they use to try to control her in public is like such a gendered way of trying to force someone to submit to you. Because it's like, again, they only want it to be private once they have begun to lose in the court of public opinion, once their reputations have begun to be stained. They had no problem making everything that made Taylor look bad into a public spectacle. And now they want to go behind the curtain and they want to appeal to her by making her out to be the bad guy, by being like, she's so violent and vicious and scary. And in reality, what had happened to her a few summers prior was very vicious and violent and scary. And none of them had any like dignity or decency in that case. That was all like part of the fun and part of the spectacle. And they're just very like salty that it has now come back around to reflect on them poorly.
Yes. So reason she was ending her tour every night with Karma.
Yes.
Yeah, and I do think we see, I think that we wouldn't have seen such a doubling down if Taylor had, I mean, obviously it just would be a different story and she would be a different person. If she hadn't posted that Tumblr note and she would have instead said, "Oh, let me go talk to Scooter and let me capitulate." Like I don't think that we would have seen them come out so forcefully against her. I think we probably also wouldn't have seen them cut her a deal because they clearly were not interested in letting her own masters.
Yeah.
But like I think that there's this desire to punish her for having even hinted at a boundary. And there's
Yes.
this desire to, again, bulldoze over the boundary, force her into this private conversation, but also just like to make her look hysterical and ridiculous for having that boundary when, like, if she doesn't want to be in a room with Scooter Braun, that's fucking fine. She's
Yes.
allowed to just never be in a room with Scooter Braun if she doesn't want to be.
Yes. And the status quo of the entertainment industry is that women are exploited within it and men get to reap most of the money and power and benefits of that. And it is a threat to that whole status quo that Taylor Swift has been so successful without having to submit to that system. And that she has been able to build so much of her success independent of industry gatekeepers. And this is a very nuanced conversation because I think that like Taylor Swift has enormous privilege. And I think that there are things to be critical of within this conversation, but through the lens of gender, their fault lies with her being able to do it as a woman. And you look at the circumstances of people like Britney Spears, who was the biggest female pop star in the world before Taylor Swift was the biggest female pop star in the world. And you look at the way that she was exploited then and is exploited now, and how her entire arc of her career has been defined by having her autonomy ripped away from her. And you look at how these circumstances have played out for women in the industry like Kesha, for women in the industry like Cassie, for women like Megan Thee Stallion, even for women like Beyonce. You look at the ways that men have been allowed to humiliate them, and that no matter how successful and talented and famous they and how much profit that they are able to make, there always has to be a man who is like reaping the benefit from their success and who is dominating them in the industry. And Taylor is the biggest musician to be able to go her own path in many ways. And so that is a huge threat to them. And that is why I think owning her masters is such a powerful symbol for them, of being like, there's nothing you can do. We will own you. And that is why I think it is so important, not just to Taylor Swift on a personal individual level, although it was very good for her, although she made $1 billion in the process of doing it. I think that there is an important rhetorical power to the way that she was able to win her own music back. And although her privilege will not necessarily trickle down, I do think it sends an important message just by being one of the few women throughout the entire history of the entertainment industry as we know it today to be able to do something like this.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. I think too, so Scooter has he said he released a statement. I'm sure somebody actually asked him, but also he could have said no comment. He released a statement. He said, "I'm very happy for her about her getting her masters back." And the other thing that has been circulating is within the last few weeks, there were some Page Six articles, some other articles with sources close to Scooter Braun, where they were saying that Scooter was attempting to encourage a sale between Taylor and Shamrock. And first of all, I think that those are bullshit. I think those are bullshit for a few reasons. First of all, Taylor has clearly been working on this deal for quite some time. Her celebratory pictures with the original 6 albums have metadata from March, so this has been in the works for much longer than those headlines were coming out. And I'm sure that if Scooter had anything to do with that conversation, he would have said something as soon as he did.
Yes.
I think Scooter heard rumblings that something was getting finalized, and he wanted to attach his name to the conversation and to try to attach it in a positive way.
Yes.
So I think also it's not conspiracy brained too to point out that like that was happening at the same time as they're trying to drag Taylor into the Lively Baldoni lawsuits.
Yes, 100%. And it makes your head spin that these two cases, that the Taylor Swift and everything to do with her, and not the Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni, and everything to do with it, are incestuous. They overlap so much. They are so frequently involving the same people. And I totally agree with you. There's a reason why Taylor refers to Scooter as the master of spin. And throughout his entire career as a music manager, he has been a master of spin. And even Justin Bieber and his wife, Hailey, poor Hailey Bieber, like, I don't know that much about her, but in what has happened to her publicly, I feel that she is a huge victim of just like relentless hatred and smears. And like, Scooter has a hand in the way that Hailey is being treated and in the way that even Justin is being treated now. And it's sad. And I think Justin Bieber is a complex figure. I don't think he's a victim in how his relationship with Taylor Swift like deteriorated, but I do think he is a victim in other ways. And I think that like Scooter plucked Justin from obscurity when they were both quite young, but Justin obviously was younger. And what Justin Bieber went through as a child in the public eye is so horrific. And Justin Bieber has obviously struggled with substance abuse and other things throughout his life. So I think that it's just like deeply ironic and sad that now you have Scooter like putting out negative public PR about Justin and probably Hailey, who didn't do anything, but they target Hailey because she's a woman.
Right.
They target her because she's a woman and because it's so easy to get people to hate a woman that now Hailey becomes a target. And so Scooter Braun can act like he's now the good guy with the Taylor Swift situation, and he's not. But he's also doing the same thing to Justin Bieber that he did to Taylor to a different degree, and he's doing it to Hailey, certainly. So it's like, there's been no rehabilitation of Scooter Braun. He is this exact same person he has always been. And I do think that like he deservedly lost the grip on the narrative. He should not have gone up against Taylor Swift because now he will always have his reputation be rightfully stained by the fallout from what he tried to do to her.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that he will never move on from this.
No.
Um, and like not even just like even if he tried to, even if
Yeah.
he attempted to never speak about Taylor Swift again, compared to the shit he's doing now where, one of those clips he's like, I've never spoken negatively about Taylor and I never will. But the one thing I will say is she weaponizes her fan base. It's like immediate. Like I did not even cut anything. I laughed when I was watching that. I was like, "Oh fuck, yeah, you sure don't say anything negative about her, huh, Scooter?"
Seriously, seriously. And I enjoy Taylor's victory laps on the Tortured Poets department when she talks about like what has become of Scooter. And it's like Cassandra is one of these songs where it's like it's I'm glad that she's able to look back on it and be like, obviously I was right. All of his clients have had falling outs with him. He's turned on some of them. His wife left him. Like all of these things happened to him, but also like no one is giving me credit for what I had to go through, apart from like my very bestest fans who are like the most loyal champions of me. The broader public discourse has not given me credit for being the one to call all of this out originally. And so like everyone's quiet now that the truth has come out, but everyone was willing to pick up a pitchfork and join that like witch trial essentially of Taylor Swift all of those years ago.
Yeah. I did want to frame the conclusion a bit more about like what she has managed to do here because this
Yes.
has largely been a video about how Scooter Braun and Scott Borchetta fucked with Taylor Swift, but like you're right, she won. She fucking
Mm-hmm.
won. She won objectively without question. She
Yes.
stomped them. Like there is such a clear and like exciting narrative here. There's like such a thing that she has managed to accomplish.
Mm-hmm.
And I think also the way that she did that is strategic too. She went through and she devalued 4 out of 6 of her albums one at a time. She did that picking the ones that the audience was going to be the most excited to revisit, and then
Yes.
she saved the two that she wanted to buy back and
Mm-hmm.
bought those two back before she released them. And again, is using the leverage exactly the way that she said that she would. I know a lot of people saw eras as like this like kind of shameless cash grab or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it can be both. I think, she was grabbing some cash, but
Yes.
also she was grabbing a lot of cash to make like a very clear power move with. And I think that's cool. I can't help it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that, like, at the risk of endorsing a facet of girl boss capitalism, it's like this is a special case because the way that Taylor Swift was humiliated and degraded and abused in the public eye for in regards to Kanye, but also in regards to her entire career. Her entire career, she has been held to this gendered standard. She has had her appearance ruthlessly picked apart and criticized. She has had her songwriting and singing abilities devalued and mocked and minimized to this day. And for the rest of her life, she will be in danger because of who she is. And I do think that, like, no matter how privileged a woman is, you look at the most privileged and famous women throughout history, and oftentimes their stories are still marred by misogyny and by male violence. And so I am glad that they're able to have these success stories. And I'm glad that Taylor Swift is able to walk away at the end of this battle and be the one who is victorious and who walked away with her reputation better intact. And I think that it's just a lucky benefit and bonus for those of us who love her music that we get all of these albums and songs about it, because it's kind of a spectacular thing to do with your career as a woman in the public eye. And it's something that has very clearly inspired and elevated other women, both in the music industry and just women who take inspiration from her in all walks of life.
Yeah. Yeah, I still hesitate before I would like use the word Swiftie to describe myself, and I don't even know exactly what that is.
Yeah.
Like I don't know why I'm so hesitant to use the word Swiftie to describe myself because like I have a near encyclopedic knowledge of this woman's lyrics. Like I know every song, I listened to every re-record as soon as it came out. I have very strong opinions about like pretty much anything, as everyone does about Taylor
Yes.
Swift. Um, but I always have like this hesitancy of like, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't call myself a Swiftie. And I do kind of think like there's some level of that because I feel like I think people would take me less seriously if they knew how much I loved Taylor Swift. And how stupid is that? How
Yeah.
stupid is that when I can sit here and I can talk for over an hour about how cool she is and how much she does all of these things I really like and how amazing her music is. And yet, like, the way that she has been treated culturally makes it feel a little bit of a shame to be like, oh, I'm really into this thing that a lot of other women are really into. Like, that's a bummer, I think. I think that that's also another reason why I really appreciate what Eras Tour was able to do by like
Mhm.
having this like celebration of loving her music and meeting these other fans of Taylor Swift and stuff. Again, I didn't go, but I'm really happy for everybody who did get to go.
Definitely. And I have often felt this way about fandom throughout my life because it's like I've always been in fandoms ever since I can remember. And there is this attitude specifically and this judgment, this stigma around fandoms that are dominated by women and also fandoms that are gendered female in general. Like fandoms for books and TVs and movies are looked at differently than fandoms for sports or the ways that fandom has intersected with politics and business and like serious like male gendered topics. But the behaviors within all of these communities are the same. It's just that women are treated through misogyny and men are not. And I think that like with calling myself a Swiftie, I agree with in that like I feel like I have to feel like I'm in a safe space before I'm gonna be like I love Taylor Swift. Um, and particularly like now I think it's more common than ever to be a Swiftie, but in years past in particular I think it was very like people would be made fun of for it. And I honestly look at the fandom as something semi comparable to like an organized religion at this point. One, because it's so massive and it has had such a huge cultural impact and an impact on the lives of its participants, but also because it's like there are parts of this community that I disagree with. There are like fan behaviors that I don't support. And at the end of the day, it's nuanced and complicated. And it's sometimes hard to be like, am I doing something that is just so in line with capitalism? Or am I doing something that is like, there's something pure, like separate from capitalism that I'm engaging with? And I think the answer can be both. And I feel this way about a lot of like fan activities. I feel this way about like going to Disney World. It's like, am I just engaging in capitalism or is there something more that's like bringing me into it? And I think that for every individual fan, that is like a sort of measure that you can decide for yourself. But at the end of the day, even if I didn't like Taylor's music, I think I would still find her just such a fascinating figure. And I feel very lucky that I enjoy her music because it's so pervasive and it unlocks your ability to participate in this massive community with so many people who I love and admire.
Yeah. Yeah. I love Taylor Swift. I'm really glad that she did the re-recordings. I also think that it's really special that Kelly Clarkson was the one to tell her to do the re-recordings. Like I just think that the amount of support that she got from other women is really cool.
Yes, I totally agree with that. And back when in 2019, when all this happened, I was working at Business Insider at the time. And so I did a few articles like breaking down like who's on which side of this like feud at the time, as we were calling it. And it was really interesting looking at the people, particularly women who posted in the industry in support of Taylor. And there was this widespread recognition from women like Kelly Clarkson, from women like Halsey, and so many other people who spoke out at this time, where it was like, I may not have gone through what Taylor individually went through, but we all know why this happened. Like it tapped into this larger conversation around misogyny and the way that women are exploited. Because even if you were not in a position like Taylor Swift, that's the thing that we all have in common. Every woman in the industry, but also all women have experienced misogyny in some way, shape, or form. And I think all women are familiar with what it's like when a man tries to declare ownership over you or like claim credit for you and for your work. And so that resonated very, very deeply, I think, with a lot of people.
Yeah, I think so too. Well, I think that's actually maybe a good segue point for where you're writing for now.
Oh my gosh. Yes, thank you so much. So I'm writing for Spitfire News, which is my newsletter. I went independent at the beginning of this year, and I actually don't think I've covered Taylor yet on the newsletter, but I know that I inevitably will. And this falls very neatly into the topics that I frequently do cover, which include misogyny and gender-based violence and how all of these things are perceived and discussed online.
And thank you so much for coming to talk about this with me. I loved having you in the deep dive about Justin Baldoni, and then I was very excited to bring you back because I had to, because such a big update happened so quickly.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
And I'd also love to have you back to talk about Snakegate. It just, for some reason, it is so much harder in my brain for me to go all the way back to 2017 than it was to go back to 2019. Like, it was so much easier to go and see, okay, this is everything that went down during Lover era. When I think about going all the way back to the dark period between 1989 and Reputation, my brain just starts shorting out.
Mine too. And I would love to come back and talk about it. And thank you so much for having me on. It is so alarming that that was like almost 10 years ago. Like it is the 10-year anniversary of 1989. Like that's already happened, I think.
Yeah.
Because it was December 2014.
Yeah, because I think they all had to be at least 10 years for her to re-record, right? Yeah, that's crazy. That's wild.
It's so wild. Time flies, and and things have gotten so strange over the past 5 years.
Yes.
But yes, this was so much fun. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much again to Kat for being part of this video, and I really cannot recommend highly enough that everybody watching go subscribe to Spitfire. You can find it linked in the description below. I've already said most of what I'd like to say to conclude because I felt like the most exciting way to talk about this Masters re-recording was to do that in a conversation with my friend Kat. But I did want to, closer to the end of the video, leave you with Taylor's own words on the subject. Taylor has spoken about this a lot over the course of it happening, and of course with the letter that she published when she reacquired her master's last week. Hi. I'm trying to gather my thoughts into something coherent, but right now my mind is just a slideshow. A flashback sequence of all the times I daydreamed about, wished for, and pined away for a chance to get to tell you this news. All the times I was this close, reaching for it only for it to fall through. I almost stopped thinking it could ever happen after 20 years of having the carrot dangled and then yanked away. But that's all in the past now. I've been bursting into tears of joy at random intervals ever since I found out that this is really happening. I really get to say these words. All of the music I've ever made now belongs to me. And all my music videos, all the concert films, the album art and photography, the unreleased songs, the memories, the magic, the madness. Every single era. My entire life's work. To say this is my greatest dream come true is actually being pretty reserved about it. To my fans, you know how important this has been to me. So much so that I meticulously re-recorded and released 4 of my albums, calling them Taylor's version. The passionate support you showed those albums and the success story you turned the Eras tour into is why I was able to buy back my music. I can't thank you enough for helping to reunite me with this art that I have dedicated my life to, but have never owned until now. All I've ever wanted was the opportunity to work hard enough to be able to one day purchase my music outright with no strings attached, no partnership, with full autonomy. I will be forever grateful to everyone at Shamrock Capital for being the first people to ever offer this to me. The way they've handled every interaction we've had has been honest, fair, and respectful. This was a business deal to them, but I really felt like they saw it for what it was to me. My memories, and my sweat, and my handwritings, and my decades of dreams. I am endlessly thankful. My first tattoo might just be a huge shamrock in the middle of my forehead. I know, what about Rep TV? Full transparency, I haven't even re-recorded a quarter of it. The Reputation album was so specific to that time in my life, and I kept hitting a stopping point when I tried to remake it. All that defiance, that longing to be understood while feeling purposefully misunderstood. That desperate hope, that shame-born snarl and mischief. To be perfectly honest, it's the one album in those first 6 that I thought couldn't be improved upon by redoing it. Not the music, or photos, or videos, so I kept putting it off. There will be a time, if you're into the idea, for the unreleased vault tracks from that album to hatch. I've already completely re-recorded my entire debut album, and I really love how it sounds now. Those two albums can still have their moments to reemerge when the time is right, if that would be something you guys would be excited about. But if it happens, it won't be from a place of sadness and longing for what I wish I could have. It will just be a celebration now. I'm extremely heartened by the conversations this saga has reignited within my industry among artists and fans. Every time a new artist tells me they negotiated to own their master recordings in their record contract because of this fight, I'm reminded of how important it was for all of this to happen. Thank you for being curious about something that used to be thought of as too industry-centric for broad discussion. You'll never know how much it means to me that you cared. Every single bit of it counted, and ended us up here. Thanks to you for your goodwill, teamwork, and encouragement. The best things that have ever been mine finally actually are. Elated and amazed, Taylor. I'm so happy that this story finally has a happy ending. I'm so happy to be able to say fuck Scooter Braun definitively, to know that he's getting no royalties from me streaming Reputation. This is the good ending. I really appreciate you hanging out and watching. I'm so grateful for the chance to talk about Taylor Swift for like 2 full hours. Thank you. Thank you also to Aura for sponsoring this video and so many others on the channel. And I would also like to say thank you to my Patreon subscribers, a few of whose names you can see on the screen right now. Patreon is a fantastic way to help support me financially, and you get a couple extra videos a month if you're signed up over there. If you are a video enjoyer and above tier and your name isn't here yet, please just let me know on one of the Patreon posts and I will make sure to get you added. Thank you so much to everybody who supports me on the Patreon, through my coffee, by super chatting and super thanking me on my live streams. It makes such a huge difference in my life and I am so grateful. I love you. I'll be back soon. Bye.